I was sitting in my law office in San Francisco, reviewing contracts for a major financial litigation case, when my phone rang, with a number I had not seen in 8 years. The area code was Austin, Texas, my hometown that I had fled from, with nothing but $3,000 and a broken heart. When I answered, my older brother Tyler's voice came through shaky and desperate. "Nadia, I need your help. Mom and Dad are dying, and I cannot afford their medical bills." My hand trembled as memories flooded back of the day this golden boy destroyed my life and our parents threw me out like garbage. Before I tell you how the golden boy who destroyed my life came crawling back for my money, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and smash that like button if you have ever been blamed for something you did not do. Subscribe because what I did next will show you exactly how karma works when you have the power to serve it yourself. Let me take you back 8 years to explain how we got to this moment. I grew up in a middle-class family in Austin, Texas, where my father Frank worked as a mechanic, and my mother Carol was a secretary at a dental office. From the day I was born, it was clear that my older brother Tyler was the golden child, who could do no wrong while I was expected to be the responsible one who cleaned up his messes. Tyler was 3 years older than me, charming and handsome in that way that made adults excuse his behavior as boys being boys. While he was out partying and getting into trouble, I was the one studying hard, getting perfect grades, and trying to make our parents proud. When Tyler got suspended from school for drinking, I was the one who had to tutor him so he could graduate. When he crashed Dad's truck after a night of partying, I was the one who gave him my babysitting money to help pay the insurance deductible. By the time I was 24, I had built a successful career as a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates, one of Austin's most prestigious accounting firms. I was making $75,000 a year, had my own apartment, and was studying for my CPA certification with plans to become a partner someday. Meanwhile, Tyler was 27 and working as a car salesman at a dealership across town, constantly bouncing from job to job and always in some kind of financial trouble. The pattern of our relationship had been set for years. Tyler would get himself into a mess, our parents would make excuses for him, and somehow I would end up bailing him out. When he needed money for rent, he would call me. When he got in trouble with gambling debts, he would show up at my door with tears in his eyes and promises to pay me back that never materialized. Our parents always supported these requests with phrases like, "Family helps family," and "He is just going through a tough time." What I did not know was that Tyler's gambling problem had spiraled completely out of control. He owed $25,000 to some very dangerous people who were not interested in waiting for their money. In his desperation, he had been watching my work routine, learning about my job responsibilities, and planning something that would destroy my life forever. As a senior financial analyst, part of my job involved reconciling client escrow accounts and ensuring that all transactions were properly documented and authorized. I had access to these accounts for legitimate business purposes, and my login credentials were trusted by the firm's partners who had known me for 3 years. Tyler knew about my responsibilities because I had mentioned them during family dinners, proud of the trust my employers placed in me. On a Friday evening in March, Tyler showed up at my office building just as I was finishing up for the week. He claimed he wanted to take me to dinner to celebrate a big sale he had made at the dealership. I was touched by this rare gesture of brotherly affection and invited him up to my office while I finished some paperwork. What I did not know was that while I was in the bathroom, Tyler was photographing my computer screen, copying account numbers, and taking pictures of authorization codes that were sitting on my desk. That weekend, while I was visiting friends in Dallas, $50,000 disappeared from a major client's escrow account. The money was transferred through a series of complex transactions that made it look like someone with intimate knowledge of our systems had orchestrated the theft. When I returned to work on Monday morning, my boss was waiting for me with 2 police officers and a look of profound disappointment that I will never forget. The evidence against me was overwhelming and professionally constructed. My login credentials had been used to access the account at 11:30 p.m. on Saturday night. Documents with my digital signature authorized the transfers. When the police searched my apartment, they found printed emails discussing gambling websites that I had never visited and a notebook with what looked like betting calculations in handwriting that resembled mine. Tyler had thought of everything. He had even called our parents the night before crying and claiming that I had confessed to him about having gambling debts and begging him not to tell anyone. When the police interviewed him, he played the role of the concerned brother, perfectly expressing shock and disappointment while providing just enough details to make his story believable. Morrison and Associates fired me immediately, and although they ultimately decided not to press criminal charges after the money was mysteriously returned through an anonymous wire transfer, my reputation in the accounting industry was completely destroyed. Tyler had used the stolen money to pay off his gambling debts, then borrowed from loan sharks at an even higher interest rate to return the funds gambling that the firm would be satisfied just getting their money back. When I tried to explain the truth to my parents, Tyler was already 3 steps ahead of me. He had been laying the groundwork for weeks, mentioning to them that I seemed stressed about money and that he was worried about my spending habits. When I called them in tears insisting that I was innocent, they were already prepared to disbelieve me. "Nadia, how could you steal from your own company?" My father asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. "We raised you to be honest and responsible. What happened to you?" My mother was even worse, crying as she spoke. "What will people think? Our daughter is a thief. How can we face our neighbors and friends knowing what you have done?" Tyler played his role perfectly during the family meeting they arranged at our childhood home. He sat beside me on the couch, holding my hand and speaking in the gentle tone of someone addressing a mentally ill relative. "I tried to help her, but she is in denial about her gambling problem," he told our parents while I stared at him in shock. "She admitted everything to me last month, but she made me promise not to tell you. I should have said something then." "That is a complete lie," I shouted. But Tyler just shook his head sadly. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. She cannot face the truth about what she has done, so she is creating elaborate conspiracy theories to avoid taking responsibility." Our parents delivered their ultimatum with the self-righteousness of people who believed they were helping their troubled child. I had to admit that I had a gambling problem, seek professional help, and make amends to everyone I had hurt. Tyler generously offered to pay for gambling addiction treatment and to help me find a new job once I had worked through my issues. "If you cannot take responsibility for your actions, you are not welcome in this house," my mother said, her voice cold as ice. "We will not enable your destructive behavior by pretending that lying and stealing are acceptable." I looked around the living room where I had grown up at the family photos that included me at the Christmas stockings, hanging on the mantel with my name still embroidered in gold thread. Tyler was watching me with eyes that showed no remorse, no doubt, no acknowledgement of what he had done. In that moment, I realized that fighting for the truth was useless. They had already chosen to believe him. I left Texas with $3,000 in savings, my old Honda Civic, and no plan beyond getting as far away as possible. The drive to San Francisco took 3 days, during which I had plenty of time to think about how my entire life had been dismantled by someone I had trusted completely. I had no references for future jobs, my credit was ruined by the investigation, and my own family believed I was a criminal. The first 2 years in San Francisco were the darkest period of my life. I rented a studio apartment in a neighborhood where gunshots were a regular nighttime soundtrack, and I worked multiple minimum wage jobs just to survive. I waited tables at a diner during breakfast shift, worked retail at a department store in the afternoons, and walked dogs for busy professionals in the evenings. Despite working 80 hours a week, I barely made enough to cover rent and basic expenses. Every job application that required a background check was automatically rejected. When potential employers called Morrison and Associates for a reference, they received a carefully worded response about policy violations and terminated for cause that effectively blacklisted me from the accounting industry forever. I applied for hundreds of positions that should have been beneath my qualifications, only to be turned down repeatedly. The isolation was almost worse than the financial struggle. I had no family support, no professional network, and no friends in a city where everyone seemed to have their life figured out while mine had fallen apart. Some nights, I would lie awake wondering if Tyler had been right about me being worthless, if maybe I deserved everything that had happened. The turning point came when I discovered a paralegal program at the local community college. I realized that the legal field valued attention to detail and analytical thinking skills that I still possessed despite everything that had happened. I used my last $800 to enroll in the program and took on weekend catering work to pay tuition. Studying law felt like learning to breathe again. For the first time since leaving Texas, I was using my intelligence and education for something meaningful. I graduated at the top of my class and landed an entry-level position at a small law firm that specialized in employment disputes. The salary was only $28,000 a year, but it was a start. Over the next few years, I slowly rebuilt my life from the ground up. The partners at the firm noticed my exceptional research skills and work ethic. They offered to pay for law school if I committed to working for them after graduation, an opportunity I accepted without hesitation. I attended night classes while working full-time, sleeping 4 hours a night, and living on coffee and determination. Law school was brutal, but it was also liberating. I was becoming someone new, someone who could not be destroyed by lies or family betrayal. When I passed the bar exam on my first try, I felt like I had been reborn. The scared, broken woman who had fled Texas 8 years earlier no longer existed. By the time Tyler called me, I was a senior associate at Morrison Blake and Associates, making $180,000 a year and specializing in financial litigation. The irony was not lost on me that I now spent my days fighting against people who committed the exact crimes I had been falsely accused of. I lived in a beautiful apartment in Nob Hill, drove a BMW, and was dating Alex, a cardiologist, who respected my independence and ambition. When Tyler's voice came through my phone after 8 years of silence, my first instinct was to hang up immediately. But something in his tone, a desperation I had never heard before, made me listen. "Nadia, I know we have not talked, but this is an emergency," he said, his voice shaking. "Dad had a massive heart attack last week. He needs triple bypass surgery, but the doctors say his heart is too weak for the operation unless he gets this new experimental treatment first." I felt my chest tighten despite myself. Whatever had happened between us, Frank was still my father. "Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 6 months ago," Tyler continued. "She has been doing chemotherapy, but it is not working. There is an experimental treatment at MD Anderson in Houston, but insurance does not cover it. We need $200,000 immediately, or they are both going to die." The number hit me like a physical blow. $200,000 was more money than my parents had probably seen in their entire lives combined. "Tyler, I am sorry to hear about their health, but why are you calling me? You and our parents made it very clear 8 years ago that I was not part of this family anymore." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice had taken on the manipulative tone I remembered so well. "I heard you became a lawyer. You must be making good money now. Look, I have 3 kids, and my wife works, but we just cannot afford this kind of expense. You are doing well, right? Cannot you help your own parents?" "Why would you think I would help after what you did?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "That was so long ago, Nadia. We were kids. Cannot you forgive and forget Mom and Dad are dying? Do you really want them to die over some old family drama?" Old family drama. He had reduced the destruction of my entire life to old family drama. "I will pay you back, I promise," he continued. "My wife Sarah has a good job at the bank now. We can set up a payment plan. But if we do not get this money in the next week, the doctors say it will be too late for both of them." When I did not respond immediately, his tone shifted from pleading to angry. the real Tyler finally showing through the facade. You always were selfish and vindictive. Here I am begging you to save our parents' lives, and you are still holding grudges like a child. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time staring out at the San Francisco skyline and trying to process what I had just heard. Despite everything that had happened, the thought of my parents dying was genuinely painful. But I was not about to take Tyler's word for anything without verification. I called Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, who had been friends with my mother for 20 years. She confirmed that both my parents were indeed seriously ill, but she also revealed information that Tyler had conveniently omitted. Your parents have been struggling financially for years, she told me. Tyler borrowed $30,000 from them last year to start some kind of business that failed within 6 months. They had to take out a second mortgage on the house to help him, and now with the medical bills, they are facing bankruptcy. Through a private investigator that one of my colleagues recommended, I learned the full scope of Tyler's current situation. His wife had filed for divorce, citing financial infidelity and emotional abuse. He had been fired from his latest sales job due to attendance problems related to drinking. He was currently living in our parents' basement with his 3 children, having lost his house to foreclosure 6 months earlier. When Tyler called back 2 days later, his desperation had reached a new level. Nadia, I am begging you. The doctors say they have 1 week before Dad's surgery gets canceled, and Mom is getting weaker every day. I know I messed up before, but these are our parents. They raised us, fed us, put a roof over our heads. If you do not help and they die, their blood is on your hands. Like my career destruction was on yours, I asked. There was a long silence, and when Tyler spoke again, I could hear him breaking. Okay. I did take that money 8 years ago. I was desperate. I owed some very bad people, and they were threatening to hurt me. But I returned it. No one got hurt permanently. So you admit you lied, destroyed my reputation, and let our parents disown me for something you did. You bounced back better than ever, he protested. Look at you now, you are rich, you are successful. Everything worked out for you. Everything worked out, because I rebuilt my entire life from nothing, no thanks to you or our parents. Tyler's voice became increasingly frantic as he realized his usual manipulation tactics were not working. I never thought they would actually disown you, he admitted. I thought you would just get in trouble and forgive me later, like you always did. I cannot go to prison now. I have kids and they need me. Sarah is already taking them away from me. If I lose our parents too, I will have nothing left. The final piece of the puzzle came when Tyler revealed that our parents now knew the truth about what had happened 8 years ago. They had discovered his current debts and gambling problems, and when confronted with the pattern of lies and manipulation, they had finally put the pieces together. Dad said he wishes he had believed you back then. Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom cries about you every day, especially since the cancer diagnosis. But they are too proud and ashamed to call you directly after 8 years of treating you like a criminal. As I listened to Tyler's confession and desperate pleas, I realized that karma had finally caught up with him. The golden boy who had destroyed my life to save his own was now completely dependent on my mercy and generosity. The parents who had chosen to believe his lies over their own daughter now needed the daughter they had abandoned to save their lives. For the first time in 8 years, I held all the power. The satisfaction of having Tyler completely at my mercy was intoxicating, but I am not the same person who left Texas 8 years ago. Success had taught me that true power lies not in revenge, but in the ability to choose how to use your advantages. I had worked too hard to rebuild my life to let bitterness drive my decisions now. I will consider helping, I told Tyler, but it will be on my conditions only. Anything, he said immediately. Name your price. First, you will write a detailed confession about what really happened 8 years ago and send it to everyone we know back home. Every neighbor, every family friend, every relative who heard lies about me. You will also send a formal apology letter to Morrison and Associates clearing my name." "I cannot do that," Tyler protested. "It will ruin my reputation in town. What about my kids? They will be ashamed of me. Like I was ashamed when our parents called me a thief in front of the entire family. But my kids need me to be their hero. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you chose to be a criminal instead." I continued laying out my terms with the precision of a lawyer who had spent years crafting airtight agreements. "Second, you will pay for family therapy sessions for you, Mom and Dad, to process the damage your lies have caused. Third, you will complete a substance abuse treatment program and job training. Fourth, you will pay back the $30,000 you borrowed from our parents with interest." Tyler was silent for a long moment. "And if I agree to all of this, you will pay for their medical treatment. I will pay the hospital directly. Not one penny goes through you. And if you fail to meet any of these conditions, all financial support stops immediately. How do I know you will not just take the money back out of spite? Because unlike you, I keep my word when I give it." 2 days later, I was on a plane to Texas for the first time in 8 years. Walking through the Austin airport, I felt like I was entering a different world, one where I had once been a completely different person. The successful lawyer in the designer suit bore little resemblance to the broken young woman who had fled this place with nothing. The hospital room where my parents were staying was smaller and more cramped than I had expected. When I walked in, I was shocked by how much they had aged. My father looked frail and gray, connected to machines that monitored his heart function. My mother had lost significant weight from the chemotherapy, and her hands shook when she reached out to touch my face. "We failed you as parents," my father said, tears streaming down his cheeks. "We chose to believe lies over our own daughter. I do not know how we can ever make up for what we did to you." My mother could barely speak through her sobs. "I have been dying inside knowing we lost you over Tyler's lies. Not a day has gone by that I have not regretted choosing him over you." The reunion was emotional and complicated. 8 years of pain and abandonment could not be erased with apologies, but seeing my parents' genuine remorse and their fragile health, I knew I had made the right decision to help them. The next morning, I walked into the hospital billing office and paid the full $200,000 up front with a cashier's check. The staff was amazed, telling me that most families struggled for months or years to raise that kind of money for experimental treatments. Tyler was forced to face the consequences of his actions in ways he had never experienced before. He had to tell his children why Aunt Nadia was suddenly helping the family, admitting to them that he had lied about me for years. His ex-wife used his confession in their custody battle, arguing that a man who could frame his own sister for felony theft was not fit to have unsupervised access to their children. The public confession Tyler sent out caused a scandal in our small hometown community. People who had whispered about me for years suddenly understood that they had been spreading lies about an innocent person. Several of my former colleagues reached out to apologize and offered to serve as references if I ever wanted to return to Texas. 6 months later, the medical treatments had been successful beyond anyone's hopes. My father's heart surgery went perfectly, and he was back to working part-time at the garage. My mother's cancer had gone into remission, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic about her long-term prognosis. Tyler completed his rehabilitation program and was working at a hardware store making minimum wage, but consistently showing up and following through on his commitments for the first time in his adult life. He was paying $50 a month toward the debt he owed our parents, a symbolic amount that would take him decades to complete, but represented his acknowledgement of responsibility. The family therapy sessions were helping everyone process years of dysfunction and favoritism. Tyler had to confront the reality that his golden child status had been built on manipulation and lies, while our parents had to acknowledge how their enabling had created a monster who was willing to destroy his own sister to avoid consequences. My relationship with my parents slowly began to heal, built on a foundation of honesty rather than obligation. They were genuinely proud of what I had accomplished and ashamed of how they had almost lost me forever. I maintained minimal contact with Tyler, enough to monitor his progress, but not enough to risk being manipulated again. The most important lesson I learned through this entire experience was that success truly is the best revenge, but mercy is the best display of power. Tyler had thought he won when he destroyed my old life, but he had actually given me the push I needed to build a better one. 8 years later, I had everything he wanted: respect, financial security, and the power to choose who deserved my help. When people ask me if I regret helping the family that abandoned me, the answer is no. I helped them not because they deserved it, but because I could afford to be generous. I helped them not to rebuild old relationships, but to build new ones based on truth and mutual respect. Tyler learned that consequences can come years later when you least expect them, and that the person whose life you destroy might someday hold your fate in their hands. Our parents learned that favoritism and enabling create monsters, and that losing a child's trust might cost you their love forever. Have you ever been blamed for something you did not do by people who should have known better? Would you help family members who abandoned you if they came back needing your success to save their lives? Share your thoughts in the comments below and hit that like button. If this story showed you that sometimes the best revenge is living well enough to choose mercy over vengeance. Subscribe for more stories about family betrayal and the power that comes from rebuilding your life on your own terms. Please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that being abandoned by your family does not define your worth, and that success gives you the ultimate power to choose who deserves your forgiveness. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the people who destroy your old life are actually doing you a favor by forcing you to build a better one.